Seth, welcome to Data 2020 Summit again. It's really a pleasure to be talking to you today and having you today with us. So before we go further and dive deeper into the different questions, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the organization that you're representing today?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate coming and the opportunity to talk to you as well. So I am with IBM. I'm the Vice President and Chief Data Officer for their Analytics Business Unit. And IBM actually has multiple Chief Data Officers. So we have a global Chief Data Officer who's really responsible for the cultural change in the organization, as well as building a platform, essentially an enterprise data platform for the enterprise to build their data assets and their analytical assets on top of. And so my role in one of the business units is really to drive the utilization of that platform and drive the business unit that I represent to start using data and analytics to operate their business. And so my team has a few functions. So one function of my team as the Chief Data Officer is around data privacy and data protection. And so we have within my organization, I have a data privacy officer who's responsible for making sure that our business unit is compliant with things like GDPR. And she also runs a think tank called CGOC that IBM sponsors. And so that's a governance-driven think tank, primarily in the US. We're trying to spread it over to Europe as well. And then I have a group focused on open source, so building out open source frameworks that relate to data. So working with Apache Atlas and Ranger and trying to build that into a platform that we can use to drive metadata more effectively across the enterprise. And then I have another group of data scientists who are responsible for driving these or executing the internal data science projects that we have. But they're also working with our clients to help them learn how to do data science and help them learn how to use our platforms to do data science.
Great. So, Seth, today we have gathered to discuss about the well-famous data-driven future.
Yep.
And actually how organizations can prepare for that. So from your perspective, how would they, what is the way that they can actually speed up this process in order for it to be successful?
Yeah, I think it's important for, that's a huge area, right? And it can be overwhelming. And so I think it's really important for enterprises to break it down into pieces that they can easily consume and digest. And so I think, they need to start with, what's the data that we care about in the enterprise? And what are the decisions that we make as an enterprise? And that allows you, especially focusing on those decisions, to prioritize the decisions and really drive your use cases. And so if you do all these things around data and becoming a data-driven enterprise around specific use cases, it enables you to get traction with the different business units and the different functions within your organization because you're using analytics and data to drive real value that they can relate to, right? If you just say we're going to do data management, no one really gets excited about that. But if you say we're going to build a machine learning model that's going to help optimize or drive our decisions or reduce our customer churn, and it's going to save us $1 billion, people can get their head around that, right, and get excited about it. And so it's really important to do it in a use case driven manner.
So, okay, you would agree that digitalization, rapid development of technology, new privacy policies, as you mentioned now, the GDPR just around the corner, these are somehow forcing organizations to reevaluate their information management strategy and directing them to a more holistic approach into data management. Okay, so how can these organizations organize this data management and make it in such a way that they make it address all of these trends that we just mentioned?
Yeah, so I think GDPR has some negatives, right? Or maybe not negatives, but things that are seen as negative by negative opportunities by the enterprise. There's a huge fine, right? So $20 million or 4% of your total global revenue per incident, right? And so that even goes to per individual maybe. And so that could quickly put a company out of business. And so that gives, I think a lot of data professionals have struggled to create the business case for doing a lot of the things that we want to do, right, around metadata and master data and data quality. I think it's hard to explain to executives why that's important. I think GDPR, the fines, raise that awareness.
Yes.
But I think there's some really positive aspects of the outcome or the result of GDPR. It requires that as a data subject, so as a customer or an employee or a contractor of a company, I can ask the company, and I have the right to ask the company to tell me all the data they have about me. And so that requires that you have complete data lineage and that you have a single view of who I am as an employee and a customer, right? And so that has a tremendous amount of value to the enterprise. It requires that you get explicit consent to do things with people's data. And that really enables enterprises to build a new, fundamentally different relationship with their customers and their employees, because they have to ask you explicitly, can I do this with your data? Can I build this analytical model to predict your behavior? And you either say yes or no. If you say yes, you're now asking for it. And so what would have been creepy before you asked for explicit consent, or might be creepy, is now something I asked for, so I see it as a benefit. And it really enables that dialogue with that customer, and it gives you a channel to do it, because every company has to capture explicit consent. There are exceptions to that. So in terms of you don't have to ask for explicit consent to do things that are legitimate interests, so really required to operate your business. Take for example a mortgage company. So one of the provisions in GDPR is that I have as a customer, I have a right to ask them to delete my data. But let's say I'm a mortgage company, right? And you ask me to delete my data, right? And well, as a mortgage company, even after you pay off the mortgage, depending on the country, I need to keep your data for a certain period of time. And so I can't call up. I have a mortgage with Bank of America, right? And when I pay off my loan, I can't call up Bank of America and say delete all my data, right? Their response would be, I can't. I will as soon as I can, but I can't for 10 years, right? And so there are some exceptions to that.
So, and how about the fact that technology is developing? Okay, fine, but so do the buzzwords in hypes, and let's say artificial intelligence, IoT, data science, augmented reality, and all of the similar. They have somehow taken the IM discussion by storm. And if you present it like this, it seems pretty confusing, right? So, how would organizations actually ensure that they implement all of these trends and they navigate through this in the best way possible to achieve the success?
So I think there's tons of shiny objects, right? Things that everyone wants to work on out there. But I think it's really important that enterprises and people working on these things really focus on what's the simplest solution, right? So deep learning is all the rage in AI right now, right? There's not a whole lot of real deep learning applications, right? It's very limited in where you should use deep learning, right? You should probably default to, when a data scientist does a project, the first thing they do is a linear regression or a logistic regression. It's the simplest thing. And you shouldn't just jump to doing deep learning. You should only jump to doing deep learning if simpler ways of doing it can't solve the problem, right? So even as we're thinking about, IBM is trying to automate things like metadata tagging, right? You can do that today using regular expressions. And we're learning how to do that with machine learning and deep learning to tackle some of those problems. But you shouldn't just jump in and do all of this with deep learning, even if you can. You should start with the easy ones. Start with the regular expressions, do machine learning, and then the part that's left over, that's where you apply something more complex like deep learning. Because there's a cost to doing these more complex things, right? There's a cost in people, there's a cost in compute resources. And so nothing is free. And oftentimes the simplest answer is the best answer. And so I think that's a way for people in this space to think about it, is start simple. Even ways that we were doing things 5-10 years ago may be the right answer for some things today. Other things, maybe not, right? I mean, Hadoop is not the answer for everything. Some people would have you think that, oh, I'm going to put in Hadoop and I'm going to have a data lake. Well, you want to have the data on the right platform for what you're doing. Hadoop might be the answer, but it could be just an old relational database that's the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Well, another final question. Looking at data management technology or practice, and from your, let's go from your point of view, from your area of expertise, what can we expect, let's say, in the next 12 months, if we can specify that?
Yeah, so I think in the next 12 months, you're going to see a lot of AI
Mm-hmm.
embedded in the tools that we use to do data management. So automation and AI to classify your data, to build your master data, to tag your schemas and tables and columns with metadata, um, to do data quality, right? And so you're going to see a lot of moving towards fully automating these, at least start getting the output of AI to start defining these and have a human look at it. And I think that's really exciting because it frees up our resources to do more value-added things, right? There's not a whole lot of value in someone identifying what the metadata should be on something. There is, but they could be doing more value-added things than that.
Well, Seth, again, thank you for your time, for being with us today. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.